You learn to ignore noises in prison. The clanks, the howls, the occasional whisper when no one's around. But there's one thing I'll never ignore again. Because on the night I felt that cold, invisible hand grip the back of my belt, I realized something horrifying. Some inmates never leave, even after they've died. I've worked nights in corrections long enough to know the difference between weird and dangerous. 7 years on the graveyard shift, mostly quiet. My post for 3 years straight was D block. That wing was for what we called medical isolates. Not isolation like punishment. This was for guys who couldn't really handle general population. Alzheimer's, paranoia, physical handicaps. One guy had early onset dementia and thought he was a detective from the 1970s. Another couldn't remember how to eat unless you reminded him. The wing was quiet, but heavy. Time didn't just pass slowly there, it felt stuck. D block was in the back of the prison. The original structure, built in the 40s. Concrete walls that sweat in the winter, peeling paint, steel doors with peeling numbers stenciled above. It smelled like industrial bleach, rust, and something deeper, like sickness trapped in the floor. I'd get in around 9:45, clock in, do a short briefing with the day guys, and then start rounds. Every 30 minutes. You know the drill. Flashlight sweep, check for movement, count, note anything unusual. Then loop again. You do that enough, your brain starts to go on autopilot, until something happens that jolts it all back. For me, that night was in winter, 2022, right after New Year's. It was about 2:45 a.m. I remember because I had just noted it in the round sheet. I started my walk past the medical cells. Most of the inmates were out cold. A few mumbled in their sleep. I had my flashlight, my keys, radio clipped at the shoulder, same as always. I turned the corner past cell 12 and felt it, cold. Not just drafty, freezing, instant goosebumps. I could see my breath, and that's not normal. Even in winter, the vents in D block are finicky, but not like this. My fingers stiffened around the flashlight. I kept walking. When I passed cell 13, it happened. Something grabbed my belt, hard, right at the base of my spine, like fingers curling into the leather, lifting slightly. I whipped around. Nobody. Nothing. Not even an inmate looking through a slot or someone joking around. The corridor behind me was empty, silent, but the feeling, that pressure, that energy, lingered. Like static. Like breath on the back of your neck. I don't scare easy, but I froze. The hairs on my arms stood straight up, and in that moment, I didn't care if it made me look weak. I walked fast back to the control station. Didn't run, but damn near. Doug, my partner that night, was at the desk filling out forms. Old guy, been here longer than I had. Real calm, the kind who never flinches. I told him, trying to laugh it off. I think I got snagged on a hook or something in the hall by cell 13. Doug didn't laugh, didn't even look up right away. He just said, "Cell 13?" I nodded. He looked at me dead serious and said, "Don't walk that hall alone, especially not this week." I asked what he meant. He leaned back in his chair, looked toward the monitor, and told me the story. Martin Kellerman, schizophrenic, 62, paranoid, violent in his earlier years, but when he ended up in D block, he was more bark than bite. Talked to the ceiling, argued with shadows. Doug said he was in cell 13 for almost a year. One night, about 5 years ago, a young officer, barely out of academy, was doing rounds and saw Kellerman standing at the door. He asked, "You all right in there?" Kellerman smiled, said, "Don't worry, I'll be here long after you're gone." Nothing happened that night. But during morning meds, they found Kellerman still standing, dead. No struggle, no collapse. Heart failure, eyes wide open, just standing. Since then, weird things started. Cold spots, lights flickering in that wing. Guys hearing muttering when no one's in the cell. One maintenance guy swore something grabbed his ankles while he was up a ladder fixing a light. He fell, broke his wrist, never came back. They say Kellerman never left. I tried brushing it off. Maybe Doug was just screwing with me. It happens, gallows humor. But the next night, I started my round a little before 3 a.m. I walked slower than usual, stayed close to the outer wall. And as I passed cell 13, something caught my ear. Whispers. Not words at first, just breathy noise, like someone talking through a fan. I stopped, turned. The cell looked normal, but the whispering got louder. "I'll be here. I'll be here." It was coming from inside. The inmate assigned to the cell was asleep, completely still, and then 3 knocks from the inside. Hard, sharp. I jumped. The guy in the bed didn't even move. I radioed Doug without even thinking. Didn't tell him why, just told him to meet me. I didn't want to walk back alone. A few nights later, Doug handed me a USB at the start of shift. "You want proof? Watch this." 3 a.m. 3 weeks ago. He had pulled the security cam footage. Grainy black and white, but clear enough. It showed another officer walking past cell 13. Then, he jolts. His whole body jerks backward like someone yanked his belt. But there's no one there. Doug paused the video, rewound, slowed it. Frame by frame, you see it. A shape. Only a few frames, like a man, thin, shadowy, head tilted, arms stretched out. Then, gone. Doug looked at me. "Still think it was your radio strap?" 2 weeks later, Doug called out sick. I was on my own. I told myself it was fine. Just another round, just another night. But by 2:30 a.m., I felt that tension creeping in, that pressure in your chest that says you are not alone. I walked slower this time. When I reached cell 13, I stood still, and then the grip. Worse than before. Strong, cold, focused, right behind my belt again. I gasped, dropped the flashlight. It clattered and spun, casting wild shadows across the wall. I tried to speak, radio, move, anything, but I couldn't. Something had me, and I swear I felt breath on my neck. Then I saw the reflection, in the polished glass of the security window, a shape behind me, tall, head tilted, finger pressed to its lips. Shh! I broke free, ran, locked myself in the control booth, didn't move till daybreak. I didn't file an incident. There's no box to check for paranormal restraint. But when the next guy came in, he saw me shaking. Didn't even ask. Just handed me a coffee and said, "You saw him, huh? The hallway ghost. He doesn't like being ignored." That was the first time I realized everyone knew. Over time, I heard all the theories. That Kellerman died angry, that he's stuck, or that he's something else now, something older, something wearing Kellerman like a coat, that he waits in D block, feeding off the silence, off the fear. I started leaving things by the door, offerings, peppermint candy, a paper with his name. The grabbing stopped. The whispering didn't. I don't work nights anymore. I do paperwork in the admin building. Safe, sunny, boring. But sometimes, I still walk past the rear wing. And even from the hallway, with the door shut and the lights off, I swear I feel something watching. I never get too close to cell 13, because I know what's behind that door. Something with cold fingers, something that remembers, and something that whispers, "I'll be here, long after you're gone." Would you do the graveyard shift in a place like that? Let me know in the comments. And if you've ever worked nights in a prison, hospital, or anywhere people don't like to stay after dark, tell your story. Because some halls aren't empty, they're waiting.